First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us today from across the country and around the world. I am Michael Higgs, the Virtual Programs Manager here at Conscious Capitalism. On behalf of the CCI team, we appreciate you taking time to learn and grow in community with us. Today, we're excited to be sharing space with Victor Cho, CEO of Emotive and previous CEO of Evite, to talk about navigating the AI landscape, strategies for harnessing a new stakeholder. As many of you know, Conscious Capitalism is a global community of CEOs, presidents, founders, board members, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders from diverse industries, backgrounds, and perspectives who are committed to the shared purpose of elevating humanity through business. Our organization was founded in 2008, and it provides a community of active operating leaders a platform to convene, participate in workshops and interactive discussions, with practical advice and tools on how our principles are integrated into various organizations and different industries. Our community of conscious capitalists offer the best practices and business strategies on how those philosophies are applied to create sustainable success within one's business, leading to systemic change and impact in the world. At Conscious Capitalism, we do this by creating learning opportunities like today's session and building systems of support for practicing conscious capitalists through our Conscious Leader Network membership as partners with our organization and engagement in local chapters. Several times a month, we offer virtual gatherings like this as a way for the community to see how this philosophy takes shape in the leadership journeys and business practices of those in our network. Just a little housekeeping. Today's session is going to run for about 45 minutes. Victor's going to present for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we're going to transition to audience questions for our remaining time. At any point, use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen if you have any questions. We hope to get to as many of those as we can during our time together. If you have any technical issues, shoot us an email at info@consciouscapitalism.org. And now I'm excited to introduce Victor Cho. In this virtual gathering, Victor, CEO of Emovid, a new AI company, and previous CEO of Evite, will discuss the disruptive nature of this evolving technology, the good and the bad, provide simple yet powerful frameworks to help you navigate AI's unpredictable future. Now, a little bit about Victor's background. Victor is a passionate consumer advocate. He was most previously the CEO at Evite, where he led the company back from the brink of COVID-19 extinction and returned it to growth, financial health, and a successful corporate extraction. Before that, Cho was CEO during a multi-year turnaround effort at Kodak Gallery, formerly ophoto.com. He served as the VP and leader of Intuit's web channel, taking the business from 300 million to 1.3 billion. Cho also spent 7 years at Microsoft, where he launched some of the company's earliest internet commerce initiatives. He's received numerous awards for his work, including being named the Internet Person of the Year by the Internet Marketing Association and receiving an Italian knighthood from the Royal House of Savoy for his philanthropic efforts, which have raised nearly 30 million for charities and nonprofits. He currently serves on the boards of Evite and Moto Payments, as well as the advisory boards of Internet Marketing Association and Wharton Consumer Analytics. He earned his BS, from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School. Victor, welcome. Great to have you today.
Hey, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well,
that's like a long intro. I feel like that's too long.
It is.
I need to give you guys a shorter one.
I need to run my script through AI to shorten it up a little bit, perhaps. Well, I'll turn it over to you, Victor. I know you'll be doing, as I said, some time presenting. For anyone that, again, just has questions as they come up during the presentation, do use the Q&A box, and we're going to get to as many questions as we can. So, Victor, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, so it's a pleasure to not meet you guys in person. These virtual sessions are always weird because I'm like talking to myself, but that's cool. It's early, and I apologize up front if I hack. I'm coming off of COVID from last week, so I may cover my mic. That's me doing Cover mic, not doing some weird hand thing. The content I've got to share with you, I think is actually super important because I am seeing, as I'm just operating out in the world, most people don't have the right underlying mental models for how to think about what's about to happen because of AI. And there is a ton of FUD. It's a Microsoft term, fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the system. There's a ton of chest beating around the end of the world and the Terminator moment, and half of it's, maybe more of it, is actually noise. I'm a huge believer in the power of simplified frameworks to just think about what is the world we're facing and how should we approach it. And I'm eager to share that with you guys today. So the content topic is the business implications of AI, which is a pretty broad topic. I won't go deep into this since Michael already went through a lot of this. I think the key thing I would call out is over my career, over my 30 plus year plus career, I've always had a deep arc around data. So my background's actually in statistics. We launched some of the early work at Microsoft actually around collaborative filtering, even before Amazon was doing it for recommendation engines. And I've always had, Evite had some pretty cool AI in the beginning. When I took it over, we still use it today actually to fight spam. We call it the Spaminator, which is a kind of a funny name. But this has been something that's of course been near and dear to my heart as I've tracked it. And I had an epiphany moment in the fall, as I think a lot of you guys did, when things like ChatGPT, or even before that, things like Dolly, really broke through the envelope of what's possible. So I'm going to take you guys through maybe 20 minutes of slides, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So the first slide I've got here is why does every company on the planet need to pay attention to this? And this comes down to, in my mind, this fundamental impact of business strategy vis-a-vis AI. And so this is a simple model. It's a derivation of a GE framework that I kind of modified and made my own. But it's how I run, and literally I would argue how every business should run its strategy cycle, which is an assessment on the left of the macro trends that are happening in the world that you need to think about in terms of your long-term business. And then you blend that with the middle, kind of what you actually are learning from running the business, and that creates an ongoing strategy. So you can kind of ignore the engine, but just look at the left, right? The elements that typically feed into business strategy are things like, what are the social dynamics in the world that are evolving, right? Demographics, behaviors. What are the technological changes, right? Economic, political, market. If you think about AI, then you could even make an argument that it's going to impact the economic redistribution over time, but that's kind of a stretch. It clearly has social implications of how we're interacting, right? And expectations, deep technical implications, political implications, right? In terms of how it's going to be regulated and used, and massive market implications, which I think will be the main focus of my chat here today. So long story short, like the thing that defines business strategy at the highest level, kind of that macro cloud, is going to be radically changed on every element. So that's kind of just one thing to keep in the back of your head. Why is this such an important time for you to think about this? Next, I want to give you some definitions. So there's a lot of acronym craziness, and I am not going to go into any of these because I think these are in some ways not helpful for the average business person, right? There are so many terms that you've heard, and you might not understand what's ML versus AI versus uh, text AI, visual AI. There is no unified framework for how to think about what's happening in the overlap between artificial intelligence, right, data science, etc. And that's actually okay because I would argue it's actually not important. It's actually not important. For me, this is the most useful taxonomy or chart for how to think about the world we're living in. I call this a Vitro special because this is something that I came up with just to help me think about the world. And it focuses not on the how, it doesn't focus on the underlying algorithms, but it focuses on the what, right? What are these technologies actually doing, independent of what it is under the hood? And the dimensions here are task complexity on the bottom, right? So think you have tasks that are either simple, unidimensional, or they're more complex and multidimensional. And then on the y-axis, this idea of outcomes. Are the outcomes that the system is providing predicted, meaning people in the room kind of look at what the system is doing and say, yeah, it's kind of what we expected? Or are they what's called emergent, meaning they're actually transcending expectation? They're doing things it wasn't designed for. And when you grid the world in this, you see a nice clean arc of some of the technologies. Grammarly I'll pick on because that's something that hopefully a lot of you guys have used, right? It's a grammar spell checking system. It uses a bunch of algorithms, increasingly adopting AI. That's a pretty unidimensional problem if you think about it. That's right. I wrote something, I need to check whether the grammar is good. And it's also delivering a predicted outcome. It's like, what's the outcome of that system? It tells you whether your grammar was good. So right, that has been up till now, right, where all the energy has been. Even things like beating the world's best chess computer, the world's best Go computer. Those are still simple predicted problems. Self-driving, which you'd argue in the last 8 to 10 years, right, has really made some progress. That's a much more complex, multidimensional problem, still predicted, right? What the outcome of that system is not suddenly that the system is exhibiting bizarre behaviors, but it's like, oh yeah, it's doing what we kind of programmed it to do. It's identifying objects, it's avoiding them, etc. In the fall of last year, and increasingly, you saw systems that started to move into complex, multidimensional, and emergent capability, meaning those systems started to deliver outcomes that were not planned or designed in. And that's a huge, this emergence threshold, so this horizontal line here between predicted and emergent, is the magic moment in my mind. It's the thing that changes everything, and I'll explain that. Some other quick definitions for the group. So we're not going to talk a ton about artificial general intelligence, but there's a lot of fear around this, which is a system that can understand and master any task. If you use social parallels, it's like, oh, the computer in Star Trek or Jarvis, or human beings. We are probably the world's best artificial general intelligence. So I'll use AGI. A lot of people use AGI as the shortcut to that. We don't have AGI today, and so everyone that's telling you like, oh my God, tomorrow, right? ChatGPT is going to take over the world is just fanning flames of unnecessary emotional drama. So we're very far away from a true generalized AI or general intelligence. And one way to think about it is if you think back to that chart that I had, like a general intelligence could master any dot on any task in any domain that we come up with, right? And it's clear systems can't do that. We're not going to take ChatGPT in its current incarnation and say, oh, suddenly become the world's best cellist player, right? That's a completely different dot on this matrix. But human beings can, right? We can actually attack any content domain, which is amazing, right? We can actually build our own algorithms within our own neural nets to get good at any task. And so, again, is this happening tomorrow? No. Are we on the path? Absolutely, right? If you think about this as a bunch of dots, there's a meta level approach that we can build to make our systems, right? If our systems can master one dot, we can build a system that actually moves it to the next level and masters any. So I believe we are absolutely on that path. But that's actually in some ways not relevant because this idea that we've crossed the emergence threshold for technology, which I will describe that as the realm of generative AI or GAI, not to confuse you because one's artificial AGI versus GAI. But the rest of this deck is around generative AI and this idea of systems that can create emergent outcomes that transcend design. That is a huge, huge deal. And let me explain why. For those of you here listening, when the internet first showed up back in, pre 1995, but in 1995, that was the big moment at Microsoft, and I was there, where the big memos went out around, the internet changes everything. And it was clear to everyone at the company, definitely clear to me at the time, and I became one of the first internet marketers there. That absolutely, right. The internet fundamentally changes the nature of software as it exists because it's now universally connected, and we're still living through the ramifications of that. 30 years later. This is people debate is AI going to be as big as the internet or the wheel or agriculture, and I'm on the outlier end. I think we are on the cusp of one of the largest, fastest, most impactful system shocks to human behavior ever over the next, I'm not going to say over the next 5 years, over the next 50 years, because we have cracked this threshold of emergence, right? We actually understand what's driving higher level of intelligence at a very high level. So let me talk about that. What is different about generative AI? I'm going to talk about each of these 5 things briefly, and it'll hopefully give you a flavor of why this is a different moment in time, and everybody should be thinking about it. It's why I jumped in, and I'm excited to run this new AI business. It will permeate everything. So number one, right? We've talked about this. GAI crosses the magic threshold. the emergence threshold. Oh, and sorry, Michael, I've got profanity in there if we can bleep it out. Probably the best way to describe this and just illustrate this is this chart. I've studied psychology. If any of you guys have studied psychology, there's a famous, very simple test called the theory of mind test. You give it to children and when they're young and as they get older, and it is kind of the agreed upon test to try to understand, does a child actually get the concept of self? And the tests are actually they're very simple. You put a kid in a room and they actually observe a scene in another room of people interacting, right? And those people will have different behaviors and they'll do different things. They'll hide things under cups. The other person doesn't see them hiding it. And they'll ask them questions like, hey, Bill just left the room and, Tom switched this item under the cup. Like, what's Bill going to say? Where's Bill going to go to find the object that was hidden? And so it requires them, right, to track who sees what, and therefore how would they answer, right? You'll see, children fairly young will fail that test, surprisingly, right? Their neural nets aren't evolved enough. But what you can see here is, various incarnations of ChatGPT, and it's gotten even better because this is just 3.5, right? Can now answer this. I think it's past the 12-year-old mark, right? They can perform, I think, as good as a 12-year-old in terms of answering theory of mind questions, and they were never trained to. Right? They were actually never trained. You could so in the same way that a child is not trained to answer a theory of mind question. They just evolve their neural network over time, and suddenly, right, it clicks for them. They build up enough sophistication that they have this sense of self. Right? The algorithms are now answering this question again without having been told to do it. It's an emergent capability, which is incredible. As a result of that, you're seeing, right? This chart I think has made the rounds, but I think it's still so powerful, right? This is the list of all of the standardized tests that GPT-4 can now pass and at what percentage accuracy level. So what's crazy here is you can see, GPT 3.5 right back in the fall was still doing amazing on a whole bunch of tests. I don't know that there's a person on the planet that could pass all these tests now at the level of green. But look at how quickly the system, right, as a sheer function of adding more complexity, right, more processing, started to master new capabilities. So at this stage, I think it's very safe to say, right, the engines are better than the vast majority of humans at taking standardized tests. But this is just the beginning, right? We're at day one of 10,000 days of progression on this technology. The other crazy thing is that these systems are creating reasoning and potentially even thinking. And this is, I think this is the big debate when people talk about AI. They're like, well, is it thinking? Like, isn't it just a really smart, text recommendation provider? It's like a spell checker, a really, really good spell checker. And then they point to things like hallucinations and like gaps, and they say, oh, look, clearly it's so dumb. Like, how there's nothing there. Kids are dumb, right? Kids do crazy things on their path to building capability that has you all in the room, and hopefully you guys no longer do this, or maybe you do when you have some fun. But it really begs the question, right? What are some of these things? Like, what is creativity? All right, this is an AI-driven picture. Draw a robot giving a presentation. The audience is afraid. The robot's scary. Like, is this a creative? If I told you that wasn't developed with an AI, would you think, wow, that's super creative? Yeah, I think so, right? So creativity is a very subjective concept. And what is reasoning? Sorry, I had to work some Barbie because I haven't seen it. I'm excited to see it this weekend. This is actually a good combination to show you not just how well these systems do at reasoning, but the fact that they can reason through scenarios that they've never been given. And this is a fun one because it's also a kind of an example of the theory of mind test, just my own flavor. So this is literally a query that we sent over to ChatGPT. Right? There's a room filled. I'm sorry, I'll read this one just to walk you through it. There's a room filled with 9 Barbie dolls, 1 Ken doll. 8 of the Barbies have pink dresses. 1 has a black dress. The child comes in and takes one of the pink dress Barbie dolls. The child has been instructed to take the type of doll that they don't want, but none of the dolls know about that instruction, except the Barbie in the black dress. Ken's feelings are hurt because he wasn't taken. What could the black dressed Barbie say to Ken to make him feel better? There's a lot of crap in here. I just threw this in the other day just to see, can the system actually answer this, right? There's a theory of mind at play here, right? The system has to understand, like, who sees what's their interpretation. And I was actually very curious, how does it do? And here's the answer that it spit out. Right? The answer is, Ken, I want you to know something that might change how you're feeling, right? I, I happen to know that the child was playing a little trick, selecting the opposite of what they truly wanted. It's not a reflection of you. So the system nailed it, right? There's a bunch of people. Sorry, I went through that fast. There's a bunch of people that would take a while to parse that question. I think it's safe to say no one's ever given ChatGPT this particular problem with Barbie, right? But it is exhibiting all of the signs, not only of IQ, but of EQ, right? Because then it followed up with this awesome mark, which is actually pretty damn good counseling advice. And I won't, yeah, you guys can kind of scan this as I'm chatting, but this is a great example of, yeah, multiple things I've talked about, right? Theory of mind, reasoning capability, IQ, EQ, that's all an output of these systems. And then the big one is, right, what is thinking? Like, are these thinking systems? And that we could spend an entire hour about that. But this is an important thing to keep in mind as you think about what these current systems are. So these current systems, large language models, LLMs, think of ChatGPT in that box on the top. It's ingested not all of the world's information, but a big chunk of the world's information. But it's a dumb system, right? It's a stimulus response system. So on its own, it's not doing anything. If nobody asked it a query, it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there waiting, right, for a text request, and then it sends back a text response. I mean, think of the equivalent of that would be a person in a sensory deprivation chamber who wasn't thinking or doing anything. It was really just right. Give me a question, I'll spit it back. But imagine, think of what that LLM can actually do. Just think of some of the examples I gave you. Now, what are human beings? Human beings, if you had to abstract them into a bunch of purple diagrams, right, are not that. Human beings are closer to the bottom, right? They have a perpetual stream of 24/7 visual input, audio input, tactile input. There's constant environmental data coming in. So there's a constant stream of information that is resetting, right, the LLM. Our LLMs are still way more dense, right? So there's room for the system to grow. And there's the world's historic and real information. Less of it coming in for us because we can't master all of the content. But here's one of the magic pieces that we have. We have this little feedback loop, right? We don't turn our brains off, right? There's an output of our neural net that's feeding back into itself, right? It's our inner dialogue, monologue, and it's reprogramming what is in our network, right? That feels conceptually very different, but technically is actually not, right? We could absolutely wire in perpetual streams of video input. We could absolutely increase the amount of historic information coming in. And this is the one that I can't wait to see what happens, right? We can actually create a self-referencing feedback loop in these systems back into itself and put a little window on it. And I will argue when we do this, and no one's done this yet, but we will do it as a society. And when we peek into that window and say, like, what's the system, quote, thinking, we are going to be blown away by what comes through. And this idea of is it sentient or not is going to be maybe an irrelevant question, right? Because it's going to exhibit all of the characteristics. So that's number 3, right? These systems are on the road to reasoning, maybe sentience. And 4, they work on any data, right? Text, images, video, anything that can be digitized can move into the system, which is almost everything in the modern world. Finally, the last one, why is this a huge deal, is because of that first technology wave, right? Because of the internet wave. Everything is now available as a service. So you guys are familiar with these terms, right? We've had software as a service, infrastructure as a service, fulfillment as a service. We now have the ability, and this is here, right? We are going to have intelligence as a service, right? As a technology service available to every company, right? And what does that mean? There's some, excuse me, there's some folks that have talked about, look, AI, think of the world of AI. It's like having 1,000 grad students in your pocket, right? Ready to do whatever you want. And that is maybe today's state, but that is a very short-sighted view, right? This is not 1,000 of it's the world's best anything, everything, right? From at least from a content kind of intellectual profession perspective, right? In your pocket, right? There is a world now where, yeah, the best doctor, the best lawyer, whatever it is going to be available through one of these systems at a very low cost. So that's huge, right? The combination of these things, right? We have emergent systems that are better than humans. They're starting to think and reason, depending on how you define it. They're work on any data, and it's going to be available as a universal service. This is profound change to how the world works. And so what are the implications? Then we'll jump into questions. There's three major ones I want to talk about. So one, there is going to be a tsunami of innovation and invention coming. After ChatGPT really broke through back in the fall and the spring, there was one, I think it was March or April of this year, where like 1,000 companies were announced and funded using or leveraging AI in some way, shape, or form. And that pace has just continued. So this innovation wave is coming. It's gonna fundamentally change how businesses operate over time, and will create disruption in a number of industries. So in terms of changing and impacting, right, how we operate, this is from a recent, actually August McKinsey study, right? And this is what you're looking at is, just look at the blue dots. These are by functional area, the percentage of respondents in organizations that are regularly using generative AI in their function, right? And you can see it kind of distribute across. It's not permeated everywhere, but for again, day 1 out of 1,000, day 1 out of 10,000, it's already here. And you can see the use cases that people are using this for. So this train is just going to continue faster and faster. This is, I think, one of my final frameworks, which is, okay, so when you say it changes everything, that's kind of hard to grok. So I like to think of better, faster, cheaper, and impossible. It's just a very simple way to think about the world. So what does this say? Right, when you think of all of that, those 5 prongs I mentioned, and now we have intelligence as a service, it means we're going to be able to make things better, right? That capability put in the hands of everyone effectively will allow us to build better products and services. I call this 10x better because human beings are pretty damn good neural networks, right? And teams are actually pretty efficient. And so our businesses today are actually pretty well optimized. So is it 5x, 10x, maybe 20, whatever it is? Like, yes, we can make them better, but there's a limit, right, to how much better they're going to be. We can absolutely make things a quantum state faster, right? So what you're looking at here, that picture, that's not a real picture of a couch, right? That is a picture of a couch that's AI driven. There's a great shoot, I forget the name of the service, but instead of, if you have your product and you want to do a photo shoot with it, what you used to do is, right, you used to go hire a team and fly to a location and find a couch and take weeks and thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to get your photo shoot. Like, now you can say, oh, take my product and put it on a brown couch with 2 vases, and you'll get a professional quality result. So 1/100th of the speed, 1/100th of the cost, right? So these are profound changes in terms of the cost structure of businesses over time. And then what's most exciting is, for the geeky folks, 1/0, which is impossible or undefined. Like, AI is going to allow us to build businesses that do things that were basically impossible before. Right? That's what's exciting for me, right? There are challenges that humanity faces that with a bunch of biological neural nets running around, we couldn't solve. But with all this new capability, we will be able to solve. Unfortunately, I can't talk about Amovid, but that's the core of what we're doing, right? We're actually bringing AI into video technology to solve some hitherto impossible problems, right? They actually were not solvable before. So that is super exciting. The end result of all of that is massive potential disruption to how the world works, right? Imagine you're a business and you're now competing with a business that has 1/100th of the cost structure, right? How do you do that? So this is not just for startups. Like, every company on the planet needs to think about this, and going back to the stakeholder thought, needs to think about the downstream implications of this. So if I go back to one of the big ones that I worry about, right, cheaper. We've never released a technology that could go through, I don't know, call it 30% of the population and make them obsolete in terms of their value add, right? What does that do to unemployment rates, right? Retrading, et cetera. Right? There's a pro and there's 2 arguments. One is, the system's going to create new jobs. That's great. There's another one, which is, no, this is going to move too fast, and we're going to leave a whole bunch of people behind. And those are unknown questions. We can't answer them. Maybe the AI have a point of view. We can ask it that. But the societal impacts of a lot of this are fairly profound and are things that we need to think about. We all need to think about. So that is a whole lot of framework for you guys in a nutshell. Hold on, let me close this down.
Perfect. Well, just we're moving to the Q&A portion of today's conversation. So if you do have some questions, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. I see that we've got 2 to start. Victor, I'm going to start with a question from Maria. And Maria asks, she says, with the tsunami of so many companies offering AI services, how does a company that is not in this space discern what is useful for increasing our specific industry?
So I like the previous frame, right? The better, cheaper, faster, impossible as a starting point for any business. Because I think it's a great lens of like, are you talking about just there? Because there are a bunch of things you can do if you apply this tech, right, to just improve your business, right? There are a bunch of things you can do to streamline efficiencies, right, deliver faster speed. And I think almost any business, as you get deeper into what's possible, right, there's a process I call divergence, which is like, these are like impossible problems that were not solvable before, depending on the nature of your business, might be now possible, which is crazy. And so I think my answer, if I get the question, is you need absolutely a fairly deep understanding of what is possible. And this is where it's going to be challenging because there's such a fire hose of products and tools, right, coming through. And sadly, I don't have a great answer other than I think every executive on the planet should be spending at least 10% of their time reading about what the hell is going on in AI and tracking these companies, because there's no single report that's going to encapsulate it for you, right? There's just so, I mean, I probably spend more than 10% of my time and I'm still way behind on kind of what's flowing through the system. So you need to just kind of understand the landscape and then I think apply that filter of, okay, which of these elements of the business are we going to go apply it to?
Awesome. Thank you, Victor. I'm going to jump to a question and they're rolling in. So thanks everyone for putting some questions out to Victor. Andrea, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name. The question is, as a company that offers AI solutions for B2B brand marketing, how do you recommend we approach the market when businesses often have low trust of generative AI right now?
So let's say a B2B, and sorry, what was the nature of the business? Was a creative agents?
It's a B2B brand marketing company that offers AI solutions.
Yeah, the service companies are interesting in that ultimately a lot of the interaction points I think are going to be similar to what they are today, right? You're still going to like build relationships, you're going to close deals, you're going to convince your client that you have a better value proposition. And so I think my just initial thought, and of course would require probably a lot deeper understanding of your biz, but my initial thought is your business value proposition can morph, right, as a result of incorporating these technologies, and it should show up in that value, in a compelling value prop, where the AI is almost secondary, right? And so if I'm thinking about one of the obvious ones, right, is cost, right? If I were building a creative agency today, oh my God, like I would not build a creative agency with the same headcount structure as past creative agencies, right? Because now you've got the ability, right, to have a completely different model. Yeah, I'm excited running this new startup because I told the founders, I'm like, well, we have the amazing opportunity to build a company on the foundation of AI efficiency, right? And we don't have to go through and retro change something. It's like we can, simple example there, coders, there are some coders who have really embraced AI as a coding extension, and they claim they are getting 3x to 4x their productivity throughput, right? I mean, literally the systems are completing their thoughts as they go. They're that good, and so that's just a completely different world, right? We're all operating in a world that didn't have the systems that I'm describing right at our fingertips, and in that world, like again, everything changes. So anyway, my short answer would be it does need to ultimately manifest as a value prop. Like your service is either going to be better, cheaper, faster, or you're going to be able to do something for a firm that wasn't possible. So
awesome, thank you. Next question up here from Miriam. So we get a big thank you, Victor, for today's presentation. I'm a leadership geek, so I'm fascinated with inner AI, a radical shift in authentic inspiration of human operating systems. So I let me frame the question by saying, I think what the kernel of the question is there an overlap, say, with personal development, and can we lean into some of these AI tools to improve our human operating system?
Oh, yeah, no, this is near and dear to my heart. This is also kind of the core of this business I'm running now. So I'd say two things. Now, absolutely, the ability of AI, if you think of the limit of some of these systems, like not to freak out educators, right? But like our whole education process in 100 years is going to be completely different from what it is now, right? Like these systems will be one-to-one perfect coaches for training an individual, right, on what they need to learn, right? As one example, that could include, right, leadership skills, whatever the gaps are, right? Like our whole engine for training can be massively enhanced, which is awesome on one hand, and then I'll give you a dark, counterpoint near and dear to my heart, which is, people, there are many companies that are excited about delegating communication to AI, right? There are companies that are saying, oh, we're going to read your email and respond on behalf of you. I'm like, what kind of crazy, horrible world is that? Like, like, yes, just because you could do something doesn't mean it's a good thing. Yeah, so it's funny. So, Amov, it's all about authentic communication via video. That's really what we're going to try to maintain in the world and actually build in the world. But no, two edges of a sword for sure. I think there's the positive impacts are positive impacts of this technology are actually underplayed in media, right? There should be much more discussion over like, no, we'll be able to solve most diseases over time, right, as a result of this, right? And we're going to be able to educate almost everyone on the planet, right, at some point in time in a way that was never possible. But then the second order downsides of some of this are equally horrific, right? So it is like the nuclear bomb when it's not treated right, right? Yeah, you can click a button and generate 1,000, poisonous substances worse than VX gas, which somebody did, and they're like, wow, that was easy. We should probably not let the world know you can do that. Um,
Yeah, you're touching on one of my fears, Victor. I'm sure many people on the call have heard this quote about, I think it was Mark Andreessen said back in 2011, software is eating the world. And I think here we find ourselves where um, a future potential is that software is writing itself and humans don't understand what software is being generated by these artificial intelligence systems. Um, so, one of my concerns as we kind of look to the future of AI and particularly the generative AI and software rewriting itself as an
yep.
improvement cycle.
Yeah, which will definitely come. If I go back to that slide, right, that feedback loop is exactly that, right? Like these systems will not become, I think, sentient by our definition. They won't become thinking systems until they can start rewriting themselves. I'm less scared of that as a moment in time, Michael, just because there's 7 billion biological neural nets running around rewriting themselves today, right? And yes, that creates some bad seeds, and we get some psychopaths, and we get some really bad dictators right at the end of that process for sure. But like the system as a collective, I think if we're tuned to it, we can figure out when these bad apples are occurring, and we can kind of adjust.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't want to give them, unfettered access to all the internet and read-write access to all bank accounts. Like that would be like a horrible idea. But that's today, like we can actually control a lot of that.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah.
I want to jump to a question from Judy. Judy asked, how does a business train their team on AI, the pros and the cons? Maybe a
Yeah,
high level approach.
yeah, no, that's a great one because it is, you can't afford, I would argue, to have every employee in the company spending, 10% of their time ramping up on this chaos that is AI. Because again, a lot of these businesses are going to fail. There's a lot of crud in the system. Uh, I think if depending on the size of the business, I would definitely come up with, um, a learning plan for the organization, which probably had layers of training, stuff like this, which, super high, and maybe this is even a little bit too, deep or geeked out, but there's elements of just like, hey, do we have at least common understanding of the landscape, kind of where things are going?
Mhm.
There'd be one layer in my mind around, again, depending on your business, hey, there's probably very specific things we should be tracking. So I'll forget the name of the person who asked the question around the, right, kind of like the agency or branding. There's I think I saw like 20 companies that are basically offering AI in some combination to either do it as a disruptive cost or, more ideas or whatever it is. And so just tracking that space and making sure that that's top of mind for the organization will allow it to, I think, identify any disruptors that come through. depending on how big the company is, or just will provide inspiration of like, wow, I didn't know you could do that, but I guess we could do that, right? And then you can go chase that signal.
Awesome. We have a question from Dave, who's wondering, how will GAI impact employment? Will there even be work to do?
Yeah, no, that's that is actually we're gonna do a discussion I think in October where it's like the bake off, where I'm gonna be on the sentience group and then we're gonna talk about the implications at another conference. But no, that's the unknown, right? The job system is actually too complex, right? No, nobody can predict, so we can just hypothesize what do we think might happen, right? The two cases are pretty simple, right? The doomsday case is kind of what I described. Not that I'm a doomsday proponent, but it's okay if 30 to 40% of the world's right work contribution or whatever that number is, right? I haven't seen a good estimate for it, but Goldman I think estimated like 300 million people or something that they thought could overnight or fairly quickly lose roles because of AI. Right? If that can now be done cheaper, etc. Like do businesses get rid of those roles, right? Do you have this mass unemployment? And then the counterpoint is, no, people don't fire those folks, right? They're now freeing up more time to be more productive, right? New businesses will spawn. And so those are the two counterbalancing points. I tend to, until I see it happening, I am actually on the more pessimistic side of the world. And one key reason for that is every other technology that we've invented that's been a disruptor has had high capital cost and
Yeah.
high business process change, right? So like, I'll pick on one, the Industrial Revolution. I'm like, oh wow, that requires you to like build a factory and put a whole bunch of systems in and completely redo your workflows. But if you have an individual sitting in a desk or working from home and their output is a bunch of bits and you can click a button and those same bits are going to come through at higher quality at a fraction of the cost. And there's going to be no major discernible difference, right, from a business outcome perspective, which is literally what's going to happen for a large number of things. That's a different potential pace of state change from my
Yeah,
perspective. So
indeed. Yeah, those capital costs
yeah,
being so low with
yep,
software.
that's right.
So Victor, I want to be respectful of your time and our participants' time who have joined us today. Final question. What are 2 to 3 things that you want the audience to know, to consider, or think about leaving today's conversation?
I think because of the group, right? I think the big one is the positive aspects of this technology are profound. So absolutely, right? There's some amazing good in the world that can be done by applying this new technology. So definitely think about that, and then also just help be the standard bearers around the downstream impacts. Right? There are many businesses that we could now make with AI that have more limited positive impact and a bunch of negative impact. And there's no someone maybe will go do them, but like why? Like why? Why? Go find the business on the other end that's like inherently going to go do something good and has much more limited or no, kind of bad second order dynamics. And just show people what's possible, I think would be my ask to folks.
Wonderful. We have a question from Tamara, wondering how people, things are evolving so quickly in this space. What are the best ways to follow your thinking, Victor? Maybe some things that you're sharing publicly. How do people kind of follow Victor's?
Oh no, yeah. So it's funny. I'm not on any major. LinkedIn's probably the best one. So if you search for Victor Cho on LinkedIn, that's the only place I really post any content, just because I got a separate existential issue with the social networks and some of the downstream second order impacts that those systems create in terms of so I've generally stayed off of them, but no, LinkedIn is short answer. And then I also have a website, victorcho.com, which that's less of a frequent posting site, but it's got a bunch of if you enjoyed this framework, there are a whole bunch of other frameworks around leadership and strategy that are out there for free. That's just been a resource I've been building up over the last 10 or 15 years or 20 years.
Well, if you're okay with it, Victor, I'd love to offer that as the follow-up in
Oh,
the
sure. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Great. I'll send that out to everyone who's joined us today as part of the follow-up email. Just quickly, I did put a short survey link in the chat. If you enjoyed today's conversation or you have some feedback for us, go ahead and complete very short survey. I think it's 3 questions, but it does help improve our programming here at CCI. So thank you for that. Also, if you're new to Conscious Capitalism, joining us for the first time, check us out on the web, consciouscapitalism.org. And a huge thank you, Victor, to you. Always, I love these AI chats. I think this is the second one that we've done. Hopefully not the last. The space is changing so rapidly, so you always bring a fresh new perspective. So love to bring you back in 2024 to speak to us again.
No, would love to. It's a pleasure, and it's a great organization. If you guys aren't involved, definitely check it out. They have their CEO conference, which happens in October, is the best, literally the best business conference I've ever been to. So.
Well, thank you for the plug. And yeah, you can also learn about the CEO Summit on our website for anyone that might be interested. Thanks for that plug, Victor. And again, greatly appreciate your time today. And we will see you at the CEO Summit.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, Michael.
Excellent. Thank you to everyone who joined us today.